We move on, please, colleagues. We're now going to begin our first debate under the theme of living together in dignity. The focus of this debate is sexual violence against children and their sexual abuse, and its objective is to encourage the level of commitment and action in our communities needed to eradicate this scourge at the grassroots level. More specifically, we'll discuss ways in which local and regional authorities can join and contribute to the Council of Europe campaign 1 in 5. The 1 in 5 campaign is part of the Council of Europe programme of Building a Europe for and with children. It is so named because the available data suggests that about 1 in 5 children in Europe are victims of some form of sexual violence, sexual abuse within the family circle, child pornography and prostitution, solicitation via internet, or sexual assault by peers. The main aims of the campaign are to ensure the ratification and implementation by Member States of the Council of Europe Convention on the Protection of Children Against Sexual Exploitation and Abuse, to equip children and their families as well as society at large with knowledge and tools to prevent and report sexual violence against children. Local and regional authorities also have a major role to play in achieving these objectives. Very, very important indeed, and that's why the Bureau has approved a strategic action plan to promote that local and regional dimension of the campaign. Our debate today is the first step in this direction, and at community level, local and regional authorities are indeed key to raising awareness, promoting the use of Council of Europe legal standards and tools, setting up the necessary structures and mechanisms, and fostering a more child-friendly environment in a broad sense, which would enable children and young people to participate meaningfully in the development of safe communities free from sexual violence. We have 3 guest speakers today to lead us in discussion. Ms. Carina Ohlsson, a Swedish member of the Social Health and Family Affairs Committee of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, and also she is President of the Subcommittee on Children. Mr. Bragi Gudbrandsson, who's the Director General of the Government Agency for Child Protection of Iceland, and Ms. Roswitha Wenzl, who is the Commissioner for Children's Affairs of the City of Stuttgart in Germany and Project Director of the Cities for Children European Network, which I personally have very much been involved in working with and enjoyed that work. So, first of all, I have the pleasure to give the floor to Ms. Ohlsson. And I think, Ms. Ohlsson, we're convinced of the crucial role that we can play in mobilising action against sexual violence. You have been involved in creating this 1 in 5 network, so we're very pleased that you're able to be with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for your introduction, and that you say that you have a special role in these important topics. Representatives of the local and regional authorities of Greater Europe, ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to have this opportunity to address you, representing my colleague Marlene Ruprecht from Germany, who was unable to come to Strasbourg today. I am here not only in my capacity as Chairperson of the Subcommittee on Children of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, but also as contact parliamentarian for the 1 in 5 campaign to stop violence against children. This campaign, initiated by the governmental sector of the Council of Europe, is strongly supported by the Parliamentary Assembly under a parliamentary dimension. Please allow me to underline that the Parliamentary Assembly was in a position to carry out a particularly lively and animated campaign in this first year, thanks to the financial support of the German government, which has provided an important voluntary contribution to our work. As contact parliamentarian to the campaign, my role is, amongst others, to promote the issue of violence against children and action to be taken with parliamentary and governmental decision makers in my own country, Sweden. I would like to ask you, as local and regional authority representatives, what can be done at local level and regional level, in individual towns or villages, to stop abuse going on for years without anyone taking any action. We have all heard recent media reports on appalling instances of abuse in various European states, such as Belgium, Austria, and Germany, and my own country, Sweden. It seems that more often than not, people look the other way when children suffer dreadful harm in the private sphere of the family. The Council of Europe Convention on the Protection of Children Against Sexual Exploitation and Sexual Abuse, the so-called Lanzarote Convention, sets out detailed provisions to protect children and young people from sexual abuse and exploitation of any kind, as well as preventive mechanisms and measures to protect and support victims. Many of these provisions are of particular concern at local level where child abuse occurs. The Lanzarote Convention, considered as a highly progressive and comprehensive instrument all over Europe, has so far been signed by 27 Council of Europe member states and ratified by 15. The parliamentary dimension of the Council of Europe's 1 in 5 campaign to stop sexual abuse of children is chiefly geared to further promoting the Lanzarote Convention in member states. The Parliamentary Assembly initiates this dimension in January 2011, immediately after the launch of the main campaign in November 2010. Parliamentary activities now include the formation of a network of 40 contact parliamentarians, organising of regular thematic debates involving international experts, and a wide range of national campaign activities in Council of Europe members and observer states, such as Azerbaijan, Greece, Cyprus, and Mexico. Furthermore, a newsletter is published and an information stand organised during every Parliamentary Assembly session. A handbook explaining the Lanzarote Convention and helping politicians to transpose it into their national legislation has been well received and already proved successful. Perhaps you, as representatives of local and regional level, might also find this publication useful. Article 10 of the Lanzarote Convention sets out detailed information on the national coordination of measures to prevent child abuse, assigning a specific central role to local institutions. I assume that we all agree that all political levels and actors should act in accordance with their particular responsibilities. As a representative of the Swedish Riksdag, I am personally interested in social affairs and child welfare issues. I will certainly be devoting some of my energies to this area during the legislature, which is just beginning. And I hope that we in Sweden can also further improve the protection of children in the coming years. I believe that as representatives of the local and regional level, you can make an important contribution in the following areas to protect children from abuse and to care for any victims: as child care and education, youth welfare, family welfare, health care, leisure activities, etc. All these and other subjects should ideally be covered by specific action plans, including at the local level. Action is needed in the local community and civil society to raise general awareness of the problem. This first of all involves alerting people to the signs of sexual abuse, which means not to looking the other way whenever they see a child who might have been abused, not least to prevent further abuse if possible. Interdisciplinary measures cutting across various areas of responsibility are important to implement strategies effectively. Prevention, staff acting, networking of contact points for victim assistance as helplines, rehabilitation centres, support for families, work with offenders, guaranteed long-term funding mechanism, etc., to mention but a few. I would remind you that protecting children from sexual violence is a major social welfare imperative and thus an extremely important task for local government. Child and youth participation is a vital aspect of effective child protection, especially at the local level. Supporting and strengthening children in their local environment, actively involving them in decisions concerning them, allowing them to be players, not objects, of child protection measures and thus to participate in shaping their own world. As a representative of the Parliamentary Assembly, I appeal to you to join in the Council of Europe 1 in 5 campaign, as the Assembly did at the beginning of the year, join in as the Congress and as a Council of Europe body, and join in as individual players at local and regional level, where much can already be done today. Only united action by all the bodies of the Council of Europe can achieve the desired result, ranging from maximum support for the Lanzarote Convention and strong legislation at the national level to, and more importantly, maximum protection for individual children. I'm looking forward to our cooperation in this venture, right through to the end of the Council of Europe campaign in 2014 and beyond. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ohlsson. Our next speaker is Mr. Thank you for the applause. Our next speaker is Mr. Bragi Gudbrandsson, General Director of the Government Agency for Child Protection of Iceland, sociologist from the University of Kent, Canterbury. He has been actively involved nationally and internationally in children's rights, as well as in tackling child abuse and neglect issues for almost 3 decades. For many years, Mr. Gudbrandsson has been working as an expert on various committees and working groups of the Council of Europe, in particular the Committee on Children and Families, currently the expert group on the Lanzarote Convention. Mr. Gudbrandsson, you are the author of the Council of Europe's publication Children at Risk and in Care, and the founder of the Children's House in Iceland, a child-friendly multi-agency centre for a comprehensive approach in dealing with sexual abuse. The Children's House has been identified as a best practice by Save the Children International, received a multidisciplinary award from the International Society for Child Abuse and Neglect, and has been a role model for such centres abroad. The floor is yours for 10 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Gudbrandsson. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear Congress members, it's a great pleasure for me and an honor to be invited here to address you on the topic of the Children's House as an example of good practice in the fight against child sexual abuse and exploitation. Now, first, before I actually go into the details of the Children's House and explain what it is, I just want to make a few remarks on the nature of child sexual abuse, in particularly with regard to the vulnerability of the child victim, because child sexual abuse is a crime of a unique nature. It's often referred to as the silent crime, referring to the secrecy of the abuse and the child victim's difficulties in disclosures. What's the most characteristics of child sexual abuse as crime is the absence of any hard evidence or any evidence other than the child's disclosure. We know that medical evidence exists in less than 10% of cases, and even conclusive in less than 5% of all cases. And other hard evidence or witnesses other than child victim rarely exist. Now, that's why the child's disclosure, the child's story, is the key for unlocking the cases of child sexual abuse. It's the key for ensuring the safety of the child. It's the key for providing assistance to the child victim with the aim of physical and psychological recovery. And it is the key for uncovering the crime in terms of criminal investigation, prosecution, and sentencing. And finally, it's the key for preventing the perpetrator from re-offending. Dealing with child sexual abuse is therefore the responsibility of many agencies. All the different agencies, the child protection or the social services, the medical profession, the police, the prosecution, the courts, need to have the child's account. Now, in this situation, it's very common among our member states that children need to go from very different locations to tell their stories, to disclose about the abuse. And this creates a situation of repetitive interviews by many professionals in different locations that can have a very harmful effect for the child victims. Now, this has been researched thoroughly, and the outcome is simply that the child generally experiences re-traumatization, re-victimization, which refers to the painful stress of re-experiencing of trauma as a consequence of sexual violence. But this situation is also harmful for the criminal investigation, as repetitive interviews can distort the child's account. Now, this is a well-established fact, again by research, that children are very suggestible. By answering questions posed to them by untrained people, asking leading or misleading questions, discrepancies in the child's stories is the outcome. And this can make the case very hard, and particularly within the judicial system, to pursue. Again, another problem here is the environment that the child needs to give his or her account. Oftentimes police stations, oftentimes environments which is not particularly friendly toward children in expressing their views and expressing themselves about the detailed painful experience that they have experienced. And oftentimes these locations also convey the wrong message. Just think about a child that is taken to a police station, a child victim of sexual abuse. Now, normally, typically, children associate police stations with offenders, perpetrators. That is the message we're giving to children. This creates enormous problem oftentimes, as the feeling of guilt is one of the most common symptoms of child victims of sexual abuse. In the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, Article 3, it says, in all actions concerning children, whether undertaken by public or private social welfare institutions, court of law, administrative authorities or legislative bodies, the best interest of the child shall be a primary consideration. Surely it is not in the best interest of the child to be taken from one location to another, from one agency to another, from one professional to the other, to disclose about such a sensitive and painful experience. These were my main reasons why we in Iceland decided 13 years ago to set up a structure, a facility, which we call the Children's House. The Children's House is an interdisciplinary, multi-agency, child-friendly facility that provides the comprehensive services for the child victim of sexual abuse, as well as facilitates the criminal investigation of this horrendous crime. The core of this children's house is the joint investigative interview. The child is interviewed by a professional interviewer specifically trained to elicit the child's account. He does the interview on the basis of a structured forensic interviewing protocol, which is scientifically sound. And this is done in the Children's House, which is a residential house in a residential area, in an interviewing room which is specifically designed for the child to feel comfortable. In a different part of this house, the representatives of all the different agencies that need to deal with the case are present and can observe the interview in a closed-circuit TV. And this procedure can be under the auspices of a judge who is then responsible. Other representatives include the police and the prosecution, the Child Protection Services, the child's advocate, and very importantly, the advocate or the legal defense of the accused. They can, after the interview, pose questions to the child via technology, and the interviewer can then ask the child, so the child can clarify, if necessary, further on this statement. Now, by this procedure, it is not necessary for the child to reappear in court, and in fact, the whole procedure is videotaped, which means that this videotape can be applied for the medical examination, for example, for the therapeutic intervention, etc. So in most of the cases, the child only needs to give his or her account for one time. Now, in these premises, we also have a medical examination and facilities for examining the child physically. We do this by specialists that are genealogists and pediatricians with a specifically trained nurse. We use an equipment called video colposcope that provides the possibility to examine the child without anesthesia. So this makes possible a communication between the child and the medical profession, which has a great therapeutic value. Finally, there is treatment services and counseling services provided also at the premises. So we must remember that child sexual abuse can also be a trauma for the parents, the non-offending family members. So very importantly, we need to advise them, we need to counsel them, and to help them in this situation. But most importantly, of course, it is the child victim that needs the therapy following this intervention. The therapy is provided either in the children's house or in the environment of the child. If the child lives far away, the experts travel to their home environment to provide the therapy. Now, we have now 13 years of experience by this structure. We have established that this is an efficient, professional and child-friendly work procedure and case management. Re-victimization of the child, we believe, has been minimized and the appropriate therapeutic service is secured. There is a mutual professional trust among the different agencies. We have managed to assimilate knowledge and experience, and this in turn has helped us to increase public awareness by dissemination of very reliable information, again, all contributing to the increased rate of discovery. We have been blessed with the fact that the Children's House in Iceland has been a role model, as you, Mr. President, mentioned in your intervention. It was selected as the best practice in the Save the Children Europe study of 10 countries' child abuse and adult justice in 2002, and received the International Society for the Prevention of Child Abuse and Neglect Multidisciplinary Award in 2006. And we have seen the children's houses arise in numerous other countries. In Sweden, I believe that since 2006, there are now 22 children's houses spread all over the country. In Norway, there are 7, 2 more on the way. Denmark 1, Finland this year, later this year, in the beginning of the next, and even Greenland has added 1. And there's a great interest in many other member states. But what gives me perhaps the hope that this will be a more widely spread approach is the Lanzarote Convention and the emphasis that the Lanzarote Convention gives on a comprehensive approach, the principle of child-friendly and multi-agency approach, and the special emphasis on the investigative interviews. And finally, the Council of Europe guidelines on child-friendly justice, which also recommend this multidisciplinary child-friendly approach. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Gudbrandsson. And now welcome to the rostrum Mrs. Roswitha Wenzl, Commissioner for Children's Affairs of the City of Stuttgart in Germany and Project Director of the Cities of Children European Network. The Congress is, of course, a patron of this network, founded 2007, and supports its projects for building a child-friendly environment in our municipalities. This year, the network launched an appeal to its members to join the 1 in 5 campaign. Mrs. Wenzl, we know how much the city of Stuttgart itself is doing for children's well-being and safety in your municipality, and we very much appreciate your personal commitment for the past 8 years to making Stuttgart the most child-friendly city in Germany, as head and leader of the city's Kinderbüro, Children's Office. We are very interested in the way your city and network may be dealing with the issue of sexual violence against children. Mrs. Wenzl, welcome. The floor is yours for 10 minutes, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Sehr geehrter Herr Präsident, ich werde in Deutsch
President, I'm going to speak in German. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. Above all, I would like to thank the Congress for taking on this very important issue. I've been very impressed by what the previous speakers have said, and it's extremely important that we have a Europe-wide approach to this issue. Because we have to be clear that this is a problem which we still have, and we have to do a great deal of work to protect our children. So for this reason, I would like to thank you for this campaign. It's my job here today as the Children's Commissioner from Stuttgart, been working to support children's rights for many years now. And for 5 years now, I have been head of the Cities for Children European Network, and it's my responsibility to thank you here today and to reassure you that your campaign will be supported by our network. So first of all, a few words regarding the network. In 2007, in Stuttgart, we founded our network, and it is characterized by the fact that it is a network which draws together municipalities. The idea isn't just to link together different cities and different topics. The idea is that the heads of administrations work together to improve the situation of children in our cities, that they get together and they commit themselves to work to this end. Although none of the local authorities have to pay anything to be part of the network, the heads of the local authorities commit one member of their staff who is responsible for working for the network. And this is one of the unique characteristics of the network and its work. Now, since it was founded in 2007, 70 cities from 37 European countries have joined the networks. Stuttgart and the Robert Bosch Stiftung were the initiators of this network, and the Congress and the CEMR, as well as the Committee of the Regions, are sponsors. Our network works in 7 working groups and meets once besides the annual Congress to discuss the following issues. All of these relate to children-friendly issues. We meet to talk about housing, health of children in cities, to making it easier for families to combine working and family life, to promote youth participation, and to promote mobility and safety. Besides the annual conference, which takes place in Stuttgart, we have had the European Award of Excellence Cities for Children since 2009, which recognizes projects in the sphere of child-friendly activities. In recent years, we have awarded prizes for media literacy and child-friendly town planning. Last year, the European network made a great leap forward. Working together with David Buckingham from the University of London, for the first time, we put together an agenda across our working group which made recommendations for cities in Europe to provide them with clear guidelines to show them how they can have an impact for youth when it comes to media competency. The Cities for Children European Network wants to work to promote this kind of international exchange with the support of the Congress. Specifically, we will present examples of good practice which will be sent to us by the cities in our network. So each city could send us 100 examples. These examples of good practice will be collected and then will be evaluated by experts. The experts evaluate them in line with certain criteria, effectiveness, sustainability, and how feasible they are in other cities. On the basis of this, guidelines are to be put together, and then the cooperation office of the network sends these guidelines to all cities in Europe which have over 100,000 citizens. Now, to evaluate how the guidelines are implemented in the cities, we will send out a survey to the cities taking part in the project 1 year after it started. So this will provide us with feedback which will make it possible to evaluate which strategies have been effective. So what is the aim of this and how useful are they for the cities? Now, our aim is to have as many different projects in the different cities in the network. If you take the example of Stuttgart, we have at least 12 or 15 initiatives up and running relating to sexual abuse and violence against children. Now, I think it's up to local authorities and the network to provide the opportunity for these different projects to link up. So the aim is to build a network within the network, and in doing so, we can improve the way in which we work, we can become more effective, and to establish contacts. So this is what we can offer the Congress, that we can say that we can make our practical experience, our practical examples, which we have collected in our network, we can make this available to you so that real practice-related recommendations can be made, and we hope that we will receive support from you with your campaigns, with your expert knowledge, and that in specific cases you will come to our cities and organize workshops so that the cities don't feel lost and confronted with the plethora of offers of different programs, but that they can approach programs in a targeted manner. So this is how I imagine our cooperation working, and I hope that in the next 2 years, up to 2014, we will be able to achieve a great deal. Thank you.
Thank you
very much, Mrs. Wenzl, for your statement, and thank you very much as well for all the work that you have done so far. I am delighted that the Council of Europe, the Committee of Regions, and the CEMR are the umbrella organization for your outfit. I know that the Mayor of Stuttgart as well is hugely committed to this. He was for many years a member of the Congress, and he's the current president of the CEMR. So please pass on our warmest greetings to him, and obviously we want him to continue to support all of your efforts. So I'd now like to open the floor for debate, and I call first of all Ms. Gudrun Pieper from the German delegation. Please go ahead.
Herzlichen Dank, Herr Präsident.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. Dear Mr. Gudbrandsson, Mrs. Wenzl, I'd like to welcome the campaign 1 in 5, the campaign spearheaded by the Council of Europe to combat sexual violence on children. And I'm very pleased that you were able to outline the network to us. And all I can say is that I wholeheartedly endorse everything you've said up to now. I'd like to add a few points here. The protection of children from sexual violence or neglect and abuse is a task that the Federal Republic, the Länder and the communes, and also other stakeholders and institutions all have responsibility to bear and are fully aware of what they are. And in the communes, one thing is of special importance. This is the fact that they do have a responsibility for children and aid and pride to young people, and they therefore have the central role to play here. And where I come from, in Lower Saxony, we have a very important role to play with regard to measures to further develop this, to promote employment for our various workers and to look at what can be done in terms of transfers. I think, therefore, that this, what you have said, is a very topical issue. And in Lower Saxony, a number of initiatives have been taken. We consider that violence against children and women is, of course, not at all justified, and it's something that we are trying to fight against, and we've started some initiatives. Since the 1st of June 2009, in Article 4A, we've written in the protection of children into the Constitution, and I think other federal länder in Germany have done the same thing. We also support, with the help of several practical projects and examples, for instance, families with a future, or pro-child, or actions against sexual violence in sport, or the foundation for opportunities for children. And this is all designed to ensure that children are not abused. Protection of children at communal and federal and Länder level is of paramount importance so far as we're concerned. And in Lower Saxony, we've also created a Lower Saxony child portal that can be accessed on the internet. We have 19 consultation places, and we have 2 child protection centres which have been created, and we have 62 62 violence help points for violence against women. And we also have created a network of child protection professionals. And what we've been doing recently, in fact, is to create a unit into paedophile research. Before, this was carried out by a Berlin charity, but we feel this is a very crucial area. I think these are very good examples, very good practical examples of what can be done at all different levels in all European countries, and we can only but support them. That's why I wanted to take the floor, because I feel it's of vital importance for all countries should sing from the same hymn sheet here, and that all countries should provide their unqualified support to this Project 1 and 5 and ensure that it is disseminated as widely as possible, because children are our future and we need to do what we can to ensure our future. And I'd like to ask all parliamentarians here to ensure that this message is properly disseminated so that we can invest in protection for children. Thank you very much indeed.
Ms. Pieper, thank you very much indeed for that very committed contribution, and also I thank Lower Saxony for setting such a good example as you demonstrated. I now call Ms. Amy Komenchop from the Netherlands.
Thank you to the rapporteurs for the good report and also for the good initiatives. As a part of the Dutch delegation, I want to make a contribution on the debate. Sexual abuse of children can be seen from various angles. I would like to highlight the importance of education in this regard. I think that we can all agree that in many of our municipalities there are social problems to be found in relation to youth and children. Questions that arise in relation to the education of our youth are, for example, how should we provide sexual education? How should we deal with insecure children? How can we cope with alcohol and drugs abuse? And how should we deal with sexual violence or sexual intimidation? In my view, the defensibility of children plays a major role to prevent many of social problems. Various municipalities in the Netherlands have included the theme of defensibility in their municipal policies as cross-cutting theme of various sectors, such as healthcare, safety and domestic violence. To implement these policies, trainings are being provided on primary schools on how to ensure that children can defend and protect themselves. But they also focus on how to keep self-control, as the trainings also focus on how to better observe the boundaries of another person. Municipalities can play an important facilitating role, for example, by contribution financially to the implementation of defensibility trainings. Trainings of defensibility can be seen as an in-depth investment for the future generations. By preparing the children, you take important measures for preventing sexual abuse. It's therefore very important that local politicians support these initiatives. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Madam. I now call Mr. Doganevsad from Turkey.
Çok teşekkür ediyorum. Saygıdeğer Başkanım.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Distinguished members, first of all, I would like to greet you with my deepest respects. The children are not the miniatures of the adults. No, children have their own rights and legal rights and biological properties. When we look from this perspective, we see that all children in the world are children in a sense, regardless of their religion, race, origin, whatever. They love the same, they cry the same. So we have to take this into consideration. Turkey has signed and ratified the International Convention on the Rights of Children, and we are trying to fulfill the obligations under that convention. So in our region, we are trying to take initiatives, child-friendly initiatives, not only to protect children against sexual abuse, but we have to protect our children against psychological pressures, psychological violence, corporal violence, sexual violence, child labor, and many other things. Because when the child undergoes these negative experiences, we have to make sure that the child finds an environment that encourages him or her to speak freely about what he or she has endured. 1.5 years ago, we have established a special section regarding the rights of the children, where a psychologist, a psychiatrist, and a medical doctor are working together. We are trying to reach our children per telephone, through the internet, or by personal interviews, to ask them to give us all the negative experiences that they have lived through. And the children come into contact only with the experts. And we try to train the children by going to their schools. We have prepared a small booklet for awareness raising. We distribute those booklets to the children, and we repeatedly teach them how they can reach us, how they can deal with a problematic situation. Up to now, we have given such a training and service to about 25,000 children. As I indicated in the beginning of my intervention, the children do not have any nationality. They are the children of our world, and one day we will deliver the world to them. Therefore, we have to protect them against all evils, but in particular against violence. I was informed that in my country, in Turkey, there was an explosion in Bitlis caused by the PKK terror organization. 4 policemen, 3 citizens, and a child, 2-year-old child, died as a consequence of that explosion. I wished that the previous speakers should also comment during speaking in favor of the rights of Mrs. Leyla Güven and her trial process. They would also say a few words against the violence that also targets small children. This was my wish, but I hope that in future, through all the initiatives of us, collective initiatives, our children will be subjected to less exploitation, less child abuse, and less child labor. Thank you very much.
That concludes the list of speakers. I would like to thank all our experts for their statements. I'm also very grateful to all those who make contributions to the debate, and I assume that you all approve of our keynote speakers and the contributions to the debate, and we will use all of that as input to try and improve child protection, to reduce abuse. I mean, we're unlikely to be able to eliminate it completely, but certainly what we can do is raise awareness amongst the general population. That is an absolute must. So I would like to thank all those countries which came up with the Lanzarote Convention, which approved it and have implemented it. The Lanzarote Convention, of course, entered into force in 2010. My own country, Austria, ratified the convention at the beginning of the year, back in February, and as a result, the various regional parliaments have decided that the regional governments will be called upon to do everything in their power to meet the objectives of the Council of Europe Convention on the Protection of Children against Sexual Exploitation and Sexual Abuse. Equally, we will be producing a report on measures that have been taken within a certain time frame. I think that perhaps we should do something similar in all local and regional authorities. Similar decisions need to be taken in all regional parliaments, and I think that we need to call for a whole raft of measures, and we need to keep an eye on the steps that are being taken, because obviously the most important thing is to raise awareness of the issue, but at the same time strive for solutions. And that way we can try and do away with this form of abuse against children. This really is a huge challenge for society. It's one that we must rise to together. I think it is a general issue of democracy and human rights, and certainly this is part of the quest for human rights. We need to try and ensure that we do away with violence against children in general, sexual violence in particular, and certainly this is part and parcel of our fight for human rights at local and regional level. So thank you very much indeed for all your commitment.